Thanks, Alex, and thanks for coming. How great was that? My wife hates it when I say that, but it's true. It's so good. All right, I'm so excited to do this Q&A. So let's welcome the composer of Renfield, The Quiet Place, Scream, Wolverine, Ford vs. Ferrari, Logan, and like 10,000 other movies that you love, Marco Beltrami. The producer of Renfield, Lego Batman, Lego Ninjago, Tomorrow War, a proud Trojan, and this is my favorite part of her bio, she will always leave room for dessert, Samantha Nisenboim. And finally, the director and producer of Renfield, Tomorrow War, and the Lego Batman movie, Chris McKay. Yeah, Marco, get on the end. No one wants you. So guys, I love this movie, and I'm excited to talk to you about it. But I was wondering, when you guys were young, what movies did you love that made you want to make movies?
What movies made me want to make movies? Probably seeing a lot of Spielberg movies and Joe Dante movies and John Carpenter movies and Sam Raimi, obviously. Sam Raimi movies. There's a lot of Evil Dead 2 in this movie. So, yeah, a lot. Probably.
Yeah, same, totally. Nope, Titanic.
What did you say?
Titanic.
Titanic's a good movie.
It's a great movie. We just watched it in IMAX 3D a couple months ago.
Nice.
Probably Fantasia. And the Sergio Leone spaghetti western movies.
Cool. I always love hearing that. So this started out as an idea by Robert Kirkman, who created The Walking Dead. How did it come to you guys? Like, when did you first get involved in this project?
Somebody slipped me the script, and I read it and became obsessed with it and felt like no one could make this movie besides Chris McKay. And just,
They hired Dexter Fletcher first.
Oh, really? I didn't know.
Yeah. They did go through a number of directors, and there's a reason it didn't work out. And then I just, McKay and I are always talking about scripts that are coming in, scripts that we're chasing, and what's out there and what's great. And he had the chance to take a look, and we both fell in love.
And Chris, what about you? What made you want to direct this?
There are a couple of things. The idea of trying to, I think I always take on things that are challenging, and the idea of trying to do something that's a horror comedy, and has action in it and has a lot of different tones. It was also an excuse for me to play around with color and lenses and that sort of thing. Because I've always wanted to. There's an artist called Basil Gogos who did a lot of Famous Monsters covers, and he's basically the guy that interpreted all of the old black and white, Universal monsters into color for the first time. And so a lot of people saw them, and he did a lot of very garish, saturated color, high contrast stuff. Which is a great way of being able to, in my mind, was a great way to be able to blend comedy and horror and action and still kind of retain all of the properties of that. And then I met with Nick Holt on a different project, and I'd always wanted to work with him. And when I read the script, the first person and the only person I thought could do this, the only way it could work is with Nick Holt. And so it looked like a fun way to be able to get to work with him and do some fun action scenes and try to do something like Evil Dead 2, but with a studio budget.
Marco, what about you? How early in the process did you come on?
I think, I don't remember. The movie was shot, right?
Yeah, we just finished shooting, and then we met with you.
Yeah.
We literally just,
Yeah, I read a script, and I was, you don't see that much original stuff these days, and I was really taken with like how original it was. And then after talking to Chris and Samantha about the film, and hearing the things that we could try and work with, it was really exciting. So
Marco brought up Lalo Schifrin as a reference, and I was immediately hooked that we were going to see eye to eye on this because I like composers who are very experimental and try things, and Marco was just super game to make something really fun and original with the music, which is which you need a movie like this, especially when you're flipping tones, you need somebody who can really be really nimble musically.
That's cool. Well, I wanted to talk about that with the tone, because the tone's perfect. But I think so. But like, if the tone doesn't work in a movie like this, the whole thing doesn't work, because you're playing. It's obviously ridiculously violent, but it's also so funny. And so I want to talk about how you guys maintain that balance, like while you're doing it, and if there was ever stuff that you felt like went too far in one direction, of like went too violent or went too comedic, that you're like, okay, we need to pull back because this is not.
Yeah, I mean, went too far for the studio, for sure. I think, obviously on set you have to push things, you have to try stuff. I mean, there's no, you got to leave all your money on the table, when you're on set, So I certainly did shoot more crazy stuff, and there's, I threw some of it in the end credits. There's a few things in there, and there'll be some stuff on the DVD, hopefully. That was I think as far as like how do you maintain that tone, I think you have to ground everything in the characters and the situation. It starts with the writing. It starts with the characters in the story, and you have to make the horror movie world feel horrific, and you have to try to make all of that stuff feel as real and dramatically interesting as possible, so that you can, so that the comedy can come out of the characters, and comedy can come out of the situation. You're not importing like comedy into the scene. Hopefully, that's also what makes the violence funny. I mean, you wanted to try to make the violence as fun and as funny. I mean, that's why we colored the blood a ridiculous color of red, because it doesn't exist in the spectrum of blood. And hire actors who are so versatile that they can, that have as many tools as Nicolas Cage does or as Nick Holt does, and can create, can flow from one within a scene, can flow from something that's comedic to something that's dramatic.
Well, I want to talk about the actors in a second, but I was going to say, in terms of that, I'd seen it before, but watching it again tonight, my favorite scene in the movie is the apartment scene with those guys, and it's just like, to me, it's such a distillation of what this movie is, where it's like every little thing Nicolas Cage does is hilarious and it's amazing, but they're getting to like this really emotional level, and like Nicolas Cage is like, you could tell that he's in this abusive relationship and he's having a breakdown, and then as Nicolas Cage is saying horrible things, he's touching his finger to his lips, and it's hilarious. And it's like, do you want to talk about that scene and like, what that was? Because I really think it's amazing what they pulled off in this scene, to be able to do the highs of the emotion and the comedy in this one sort of sequence.
Yeah, I mean, part of it's just, Cage, what we talked about, him being Anne Bancroft in The Graduate.
Oh, yeah.
In that scene, and that. And so he's kind of, in some ways he's channeling Anne Bancroft in The Graduate.
Do you want to talk about that more? Because I read an interview where he said that, and which sounds batshit crazy,
yeah.
but what his feeling was, why he was channeling Anne Bancroft in that.
Because you always have to play especially for comedy to work in a situation like this, you have to play the reality of the scene. You have to play the fact that this is, part of the job a little bit, as a director, was to talk about taking out as much of the supernatural stuff as humanly possible. Like, don't play it like you're a fucking vampire, like he's your servant. Like, play it like it's a jilted lover. That these are he's a bad boyfriend, but he found out his boyfriend girlfriend was cheating on him, and play it like that. Play it like with that level of like hurt, and you know what he's up to, and you're not going to let him know that you know what he's up to. You're going to let him fucking continue to lie to you. Renfield's continuing to lie to him throughout the scene, so Cage gets to play all of that stuff that he does, and we just kept, pushing him to just, try more things and just be, just really overplay how fucking, how much what's going on. And he obviously rose to the challenge.
Well, let's talk about casting. So back before that, obviously Nicolas Cage is amazing in this movie. He's out of control. And I remember when I read the casting, and I think everyone kind of had that reaction. We're like, it's like, okay, Renfield, blah blah. And I was like, wait a minute, Nicolas Cage is gonna play Dracula? That sounds amazing. Was he your like what was that process? Was there a list of like, okay, potential Draculas, or did you always sort of have Nicolas Cage in mind?
Well, there's always a list. There's always a list with the studio.
Who's on the studio's list?
Every breathing white guy in film history. But Cage wasn't. Definitely wasn't.
Was not on the list.
And I guess for us, we wanted the reason why we sort of focused on Nick was I think there's just a very short list of people that you're really truly interested in seeing. Like Dracula's a character that's been done a million times, and it's like other than like Hamlet or fucking Sherlock Holmes or something like that. Like Dracula's a character that's been done the most times, so finding somebody who you actually really are curious about what they're going to do with Dracula. I mean, I literally came up with 2 names. We had Nicolas Cage and Daniel Day-Lewis. And those are the 2 people. I was just like, who are the 2 people you think, who you're going to fucking spend your money to go see play Dracula? Who are you most interested in really truly seeing? And not like, okay, cool, that could be cool. It's something like you're really truly curious about. And it's going to give you something. And, Cage every day is like one of the most inspirational people to work with because he's got a childlike enthusiasm about making movies. So every day on set, he's so inventive, and he just really is, besides the fact he's got a cinephile's knowledge of movies and loves horror movies and that kind of thing, he's just so full of joy when he's making movies. He just really likes being there. He was in fucking 4 hours of makeup before he gets on set, and then we shoot for a 10 or 12 hour day, and then he's got to take it off at the end of the day, and he's just like he's making fucking Super 8 movies in his backyard like when he was a kid, and that's something really you don't get a lot, and somebody's got that level of joy. It's really infectious, and makes you just want to make more movies with them and make it's very inspirational.
Yeah, and I think on the Cage front too, like Chris was saying, the studio had a bunch of ideas, and if we had gone to one of those guys, it would have just been another script that landed on their desk, and maybe they were interested and maybe they weren't. But for Cage, this is a character he has always really wanted to play, and that is who we wanted to be, have a seat at the table with us in order to fulfill the filmmaking experience and to give audiences what they wanted, and that was part of why we wanted to work with him too.
And is it because I read that you said something that he stayed in character all the time, but then he's like, I didn't. No. So what was what was that actual?
I didn't fucking say that. Clearly, he did not stay in character the entire time. I mean, he was in costume, so like he's in heavy makeup. So I think the question was sort of I think the question was something like, what was it? Did he always feel like you're talking to Dracula? And I think yes, he looks like fucking. When I was sitting here talking about the fucking teeth and the hair and the makeup and stuff like that, so he looks like Dracula the entire time, but he was not like Jared Leto method acting or something like that, where he's like being Joker and pulling pranks on people or some fucking shit. Like he was like a normal human being.
Right, but imagine
like a really normal guy.
Imagine being a PA and having to fucking walk the guy back to his trailer when he's in that getup. Yeah. You're just like, all right, I'm gonna keep my distance, but he couldn't be lovelier the entire time.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I want to back.
So please, if anybody, please fight that idea.
He was very, because I read this interview, and he was very sensitive about that. He goes, "Well, I felt like I joked around with him, and I had a good time in between takes."
Yeah.
He goes, maybe because I had the teeth in.
Yeah.
That they felt.
Well, the teeth and the contacts and things like that sometimes. So he's got an intense look.
Well, Marco, I wanted to backtrack a little bit and back to the tone question, because your score is absolutely fantastic, and the same thing to you.
All of Marco's scores are fantastic. I just want to put that out there.
Which is why he has scored 10,000 of your favorite movies.
Yeah.
Look him up when you get home, and it's fairly amazing.
It's insane how many movies Marco's done.
Yeah.
But do you want to talk about your process and sort of finding the same thing, finding that right balance and the tone between sort of the gothic horror and also the comedy and the action, and like it's a really fantastic score.
First of all, it's fun to, I don't hear the stuff because I come on after the movie shot, but it's great to hear these stories. It's fun. But no, I mean, everything I do is guided by what the material that I get, and so I respond to the movie. I respond visually, and when Chris is doing this amazing stuff in the edit room, and we'd be going back and forth, and I'd send him stuff, and he'd try, and it's a real collaboration because he's trying stuff, moving things. Hey, check this out. What do you think of this? And then I'm like, wow, that totally informs the scene in a way I never even thought of, And so it's a real give and take. And listen, when I started on this, and the movie evolved a lot. This movie was not an easy movie. I mean, I can't say it's an easy movie to make because you made the movie, but I mean the whole process was hard. But I think oftentimes through hard processes you get something that's extra special. And when I started on this, my original impulse was, besides Lalo Schifrin, was to use the original Swan Lake as my inspiration, and that was it. It totally sets a different tone for the whole thing, and so that's all gone. It's actually one place I noticed that we still ended up using it in the movie, but as soon as you put music on a scene, it colors it a lot more, and so just being aware of being on that edge and whether you're going too far or not, it's a very sensitive thing.
And Swan Lake is the only piece of music in the original 1931 Todd Browning movie, so that's why that's sort of important too.
Yeah.
To the history of Dracula. So there was like Easter eggs like that we're always trying to find and put in the movie some connection to whether it's the Todd Browning movie, the Hammer movies, Disco, Frank Langella, Gary Oldman. There's shout outs all those movies.
Well, let's talk about that because I love that. I love how you used the original or the 1931 Dracula movie, and like it was pretty amazing because I don't think Nicolas Cage looks like Bela Lugosi, but the way you lit it and the there were times in the movie where it's like, oh my god, he looks like fucking Bela Lugosi. Yeah. When did that idea come for you? Of like, okay, let's use the footage of that movie and like kind of insert these guys into it because it was a great way of grounding this in sort of the history of Universal horror.
Well, it's an idea that came out of the character, kind of wanting to have a connection. I mean, I wanted to have a connection to the past, and I also wanted the audience to really truly feel that Renfield and Dracula had a past. And so whether or not people have watched the Todd Browning movie, or whether through pop culture and other movie parodies or posters or something like that, everyone has some connection to that, especially that moment on the staircase with the spiderweb behind Dracula. And, I don't drink wine, and I am Dracula and all that stuff. Like I think most people have some passing familiarity with that. So by putting our characters in there in something that's old but also feels like familiar, it just felt like you could do a shorthand for their past. And really kind of feel it, because it was important to kind of just sort of feel it and absorb it. So, and the studio was not interested in that at all, in any way, shape, or form.
That's actually surprising because Universal Studios got started making monster movies.
Yeah, I mean,
that's their history.
It was surprising.
Yes. And if it had been up to me, I would have gone through the Hammer stuff and would have gone through Disco Dracula and all of the 70s stuff and all that kind of thing. But it turned out great, and we had Jamie Price, our visual effects supervisor, and that whole team put together really did a great job of compositing those guys in there and got really nerdy about the lenses and lighting and everything else, because that's a big part of how that stuff works. How you make that stuff play. And just for me, that was another thing for this movie, being able to kind of use, in general for the whole movie, use old anamorphic lenses that were uncoated. The front element was uncoated, so you got a lot of light play in the movie, and just kind of gave it kind of just its own unique style. That was something that was important to for the movie as a whole.
Well, Margaret talked about how the movie changed a lot, and then I had a question when I was first watching it. The group therapy stuff is awesome, and it's amazing, and it like really sells the movie well. And I remember back to when I first saw Austin Powers years ago, is I love that movie, but when he goes to group therapy with his son, I'm like, I fucking love this movie because it's bringing in all these different things. Did the script always start there, or is that something you found during the editing process of like, let's begin the movie with him in this situation?
Yeah, the scripts kind of started in a couple of different spots. There was something sort of quasi with the castle, kind of an opening that's similar-ish to how we open now. But the studio was also like, from a budgetary standpoint, they wanted to chop that off and just start in modern times. They were very afraid of like the people were not going to fucking care or get any of that stuff about the past. So they just wanted to kind of start in modern times. And there was a couple of scenes prior to the CODA meeting, but through the process of both us trying to find the right start for the movie and also just budgetarily, we just kind of got to a place where the CODA meeting was the right place to start. And the movie didn't have voiceover in it in the script, but there was. I mean, I don't love all of the voiceover. But there was some need to put voiceover in the movie to get the Renfield's a very passive character. If you just started him kind of sitting there watching, he's a more passive character. So being able to kind of get him kind of actively involved in the movie was something that we sort of found ultimately. I mean, I kind of knew that we had to get to a place like that, but we kind of found that in post.
Is there a longer version of the movie that we might see at some point, or are you saying that there were sequences that maybe you never shot in the first place, or?
There were definitely some sequences we didn't shoot in the first place, which I think ultimately is for the except for most of the sequences. It's probably better that we didn't shoot them. There's a couple that would have been good if we shot them. But I don't know if there'll ever be a separate cut. I don't think you're not going to get like Apocalypse Now Redux with Renfield.
Well, you talked a little bit about Nick Holt. I'm obsessed with Nick Holt. I think he's amazing.
Same.
I think he can do anything. And if you guys haven't seen The Great, it's my wife and my favorite show. He's so fantastic on the show. What made you think of him initially, or just you were a fan? Or like, what was it about Nick that you felt like would really work for this character?
He's unafraid to do things that are unlikable. Whether that's unlikable, being a guy who's helping Dracula murder people or just eat bugs on camera. He's unafraid to mess with stuff, and that's the similarity between him and Nick Cage, is that they, they'll go for it. They'll try things. They're unafraid to try things, and yet both of them have incredible charm and chemistry with all of the other actors. Holt, throws himself into stunt stuff. There was a dance sequence that we had at one point that he threw himself into choreography for that, and he's just, he's unafraid to not look cool, and I think a lot of people have a hard time, kind of like losing that a little bit, and he kind of, if you look at what he did in Warm Bodies, if you look at what he did in Fury Road, there's not a lot of people that can do that, and when I read the script, there was only one person that I saw in Renfield. The only way the movie could work was if Nick Holt played Renfield, because he's just like, he could do everything he needed for this movie.
And also, such a good cast. I love Aquafina, and she's really. They have such an interesting dynamic in this. Like, did they read together at all, or like they're so good together, or you just had this feeling that Nick Holt and Aquafina would be this like great pair?
Yeah, I kind of like their crazy height difference. That was really charming to me for some reason. I just thought that was kind of cute. And in a situation like this, you don't necessarily get to read people together, so you're kind of flying by the seat of your pants a little bit. So I knew that Nick Holt is a guy who can really put everyone at ease and just be really generous in a scene. He's a really generous actor. So I knew that we could make that work. And then once Aquafina showed up and she was there on set, like it was just like, they just got along like gangbusters. Like they really were like a fun pair. You know, it was right away from the camera test. We knew right away, okay, these guys are gonna have a lot of fun together, and they were just riffing off each other and having a good time. Like I said, there's just that kind of weird, cartoonish kind of, you know, they just look physically, you know, so different in their height, and he's kind of this gangly, you know, guy and stuff like that. Yeah, it was immediately like, you know, to me it was gonna work right away.
Yeah, they're good too. So I read, let's talk about the bugs. So I read that you and Nick Holt had a bug eating thing at the start of the production to decide what bugs, and it's like there were some gummy bugs and actual real bugs.
Yes.
Like there were flavored crickets that you guys tried and tarantulas. Is that true?
Yes.
Not tarantulas.
We didn't. Yeah, no one tried the tarantula.
But someone did bring you a
stood there,
tarantula.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
There was a fucking table of all these bugs laid out for them to try. And in a move of solidarity, McKay, because Holt had to eat them for production and wanted to try them ahead of time, and in a move of solidarity, McKay chomped down two, and
There was some peer pressure.
yeah, well, I don't know who could have contributed to that peer pressure. And I just stood there videoing them.
You didn't even.
and did not
There's no
partake.
show of solidarity over here. Yeah, the crickets actually were bad. I think they were, you know, I think they were flavored or something like that. But the potato bug had layers of crunch to it that you went through, and then found the next layer and the next layer, and then you had pieces in your mouth for about a week that could not wash out. That was a huge mistake that I will hopefully never make again.
Did you bring any of the extra ones to the scoring session so that Marco could?
I should have brought him to the Walker.
There's got to be some advantage to being the composer.
Yeah.
Let's talk about. So you got shot in New Orleans.
Yeah.
So Samantha, tell me that you were there during Mardi Gras, and what went down during Mardi Gras when you guys were shooting?
We lost the writer on a Mardi Gras float.
That's true. We were trying to.
We had notes from the studio while we were shooting the movie.
Yeah, they could not get a hold of Ridley.
We couldn't find the writer, and we heard that he was on a parade float.
We
in Mardi
literally had to give the crew 4 days off to celebrate Mardi Gras and go out and get wasted and then come back to work on a Wednesday.
A writer was probably so excited to be invited to set
Yes.
that he got caught up in it and then on the float.
The spirit moved him.
That's amazing. So, I mean, the design of the movie is so great. One of the things that struck with me, I love the blood throne. And I thought that was like such a great, again, distillation of like the modern version of this. It's like, okay, you would have blood bags like to feed him. And I love the design of that. Do you want to talk about where that idea came from?
Yeah, I was very fortunate to work with a couple of real, geniuses. I sort of, talked about, obviously Marco, Jamie Price, the visual effects supervisor, and Alec Hammond and Lisa Lavas. Alec was the production designer, and Lisa did the costumes. And I guess I should also throw in Dave Cole, who did the color correction in the movie with Photochem. But Alec and I talked a lot about, because I think it was really originally written for a sewer or something like that. There was something else, and we just, we kind of searched for what could be a really interesting location that it could be credible that they could, hide in this place and have, but also like something that Renfield, you'd have gurneys, you'd have things that would help him be able to bring bodies in. You'd have a blood bank and possibly, blood bags and that sort of thing. Renfield, just show off that Renfield is smart and that they're sort of like, even though they maybe had fallen on hard times, that they, that he was, had some ingenuity to him. So, and the blood throne was, it's a dental chair for a dental surgery chair that it was actually, I think, something that we saw when we were touring Charity Hospital, because the exterior and the initial hallway stuff is a famous hospital in New Orleans that was taken out by Katrina, And so we shot in some of that, but some of the stuff that inspired our set was a little too asbestos-y and lead painty for us to shoot in. So I didn't go full Werner Herzog, and we decided to build it. And the throne was just something that I thought, you know, what could sort of look like something kind of look like something like from their past, something that felt ostentatious but also was practical. And so the surgical chair, which is, like I said, something kind of looked like something we saw pieces of in the Cherry Hospital, and then the blood bags kind of fanning out behind it just felt like both had a sort of like a cool look to it, but also felt like it was practical and kind of made it feel like we were sort of honoring Dracula's. Renfield was trying to honor Dracula's station, and there's a little bit of, like, I don't know if you know the artist Jeff Darrow did a lot of Matrix designs and did some did an interesting comic book with Frank Miller, but there's a little bit of Jeff Darrow's kind of design in the blood bags that are kind of going into a guy to kind of help him go back to life. We stole liberally from a lot of artists. But Alec was a genius, and he put that whole thing together, and it's just when you go to a set like that, and it's actually like something you can shoot 360 degrees if you want to, and the lighting is done more practically than using a lot of lighting units. That's something that is really, for a filmmaker, that's really incredible.
Little side thing, I was reading all of your guys' bio set, and Marco, I saw that when you first came to LA, that Jerry Goldsmith was your mentor.
Yes.
And Jerry Goldsmith, you guys should know him, but one of the greatest composers of all time. What was that experience like, and what did you learn from him, or what did you take away from that?
I learned. Well, I came from going to music school, and I was running a lot of concert music, and it's more based on complexity, I guess. The thing that Jerry was really great at was being as concise and economical as possible, and writing things as simply and as clearly. And I think that's the thing that stuck with me most of all. Like, you want to get your ideas, not just for playability, because I mean the musicians, when we're going to record this, they're sight reading music, and you don't have a lot of time, so you want it to sound as good as possible in the shortest amount of time. But also for getting your ideas across. You don't want it to be convoluted. You want it to be clear. And so Jerry was the one who sort of pounded that into us.
That's great. Thanks. Chris, I want to talk about the action and the fight scenes, because I love action movies, and I thought the fights were fantastic. And again, I feel like you found this really great tone where it's like there's a playfulness to the action. It kind of reminded me of sort of Jackie Chan, where it's like there's a lot of specificity to the moves and like the amount of gore that you see, which is kind of amazing. Do you want to talk about your approach to the fight scenes? And
yeah, there was one other genius I left off, was Chris Brewster, the stunt coordinator and co-second unit director with Jamie Price. Samantha and I worked with Chris on Tomorrow War. He came in at the end of the Tomorrow War when we were up in Iceland and shooting the final fight between Pratt and J.K. Simmons and the female White Spike, which turned into I started off as like a gunfight that turned into sort of a knockdown brawl kind of thing, and Chris had choreographed that, and I really liked working with him because I like kind of, he's got like a nice brutal style, but also just a guy who just was really quick on his feet, and like if I threw thoughts and things like that, he'd come up with solutions really fast. So he came, and one of the things we talked about very early on is that the fight scenes had to have a point. And that they also have to have something that's funny in them. And we immediately went to Jackie Chan and just started looking at Jackie Chan fights and kind of studied that. And so he started doing stunt viz. And his first bit of stunt biz was the restaurant scene, and it was just like he got the tone so fast. He understood, you know, there's got to be something there's gonna be something super bloody and funny, and then there's gonna be something that's kind of whimsical, like with the ska guys and kind of throwing the chloroform rag around and catching it and stuff like that. Like he just really brought a lot of invention to the fight scenes, and he was just a joy to work with. So his choreography is amazing. So very fortunate to work with Chris.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and we had a lot of time with Brewster. Like we had the time with the actors and with, we call him Ninja, because they were all in New Orleans with us in prep and learning all the choreography well in advance, and just being able to go through and the repetition, because our shoot schedule was so challenging and it was very heavy location based, so we had to be in and out of these spots real quick. And he just did such a good job creating a wonderful, friendly environment in his gym and getting all those guys up to speed and allowing them to feel like they were nailing it. And he brought down a great team too, but he's just fantastic.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I'm going to open up the questions in a second, but Samantha, you are a Trojan, and you went here, and this is our first time on stage with the movie and this Q&A, which I think is awesome.
Yeah.
What was your major and what was your experience here?
I was a film major. I went to the School of Cinematic Arts, and I loved it. I brought my sweatshirt actually with me that I bought freshman year that's all torn up, and I had all my classes in this theater with Drew
Casper.
Thank
yeah.
you. Yeah.
Well, I think finally retired. He
that's
is
what I
as
heard.
old as Dracula.
Yes.
That's so mean, but he was amazing.
Kind of is
He still is
Dracula,
amazing.
yeah.
Sorry.
Him and Rick Jewell were my two favorite teachers. And I loved SC. I mean, it was a dream come true to actually get into this school. It was a dream come true to go here and ride my bike to my classes every day. And I cannot believe that I'm up here because I was sitting in these seats dreaming about this day, and I did not think it could ever happen. So if you are like me and you are a kid with a dream, work your ass off, and you too can make movies one day. And you should, because it's really fun.
That's awesome.
You can be an adult with a dream too. It's
What'd you
okay.
say, Chris?
Oh, yeah.
You can be an adult with a dream. You don't have to be a kid with
Yeah,
a dream.
yeah, I'm still a
You can also be an adult.
Yeah, go ahead.